Chapter 20. The alien's sharp claws were cutting at her chest and arms as it raised her from the floor like a child and held her in front of its ugly face. This had to be a nightmare. This couldn't be real. She would wake up screaming at any moment. She wasn't about to die after all this time in the same way that Danny had died. This had been her nightmare more nights than she had ever wanted to count, and now it was coming true. God damn it all to hell! She wanted to see her children just one more time. But that wasn't going to be possible. She was going to die. The teeth of the alien seemed only inches from her face. Saliva dripped from them as it slowly opened its mouth. She twisted back and forth, doing everything in her power to pull the Kramer up and aim it anywhere near that ugly mouth and head. But the claws only cut her arms and stomach deeper the more she struggled. Inside, down in the black hole of its mouth, she could see the second set of teeth gleaming, pulsing like they wanted to come pouring out and ram through her face.
"Hold still!"
Hank's voice screamed behind her. Somehow, through her sheer terror, through the silent screams she was afraid to let go of, she heard him. Hold still. Shit, what choice did she have? She could do that. She didn't want to. She wanted to scream and twist and to get free and run like hell. But somewhere deep inside, she understood Hank's command. She froze, forcing her body to become as rigid as possible, her eyes focused on the wide-open jaws of the alien. Her willpower stopped her from throwing up her last energy snack. Her eyes watered from the pain and the thick smell of alien rot as she forced them to stay totally open. Behind her, she heard Hank shout,
"The glass behind her! Blow it out!"
Almost instantly, the roaring sound of a half-dozen Kramers on fully automatic filled the room, mixing with the sound of glass shattering and water pouring like a river gone wild. Her mind screamed, "What the hell is he doing?" But she kept her body frozen like a log. The alien glanced away from her. Then suddenly, everything went crazy at once. It felt as if someone had pulled the rug out from under her captor. The bug jerked her up, then sharply down, the claws digging even harder into her flesh as the wall of water from behind the broken glass hit its legs. And then it let go of her as it went over backward. She slammed hard into the floor. The impact knocked the wind out of her, and the water sent her tumbling across the hard tiles. She felt wrapped in a thick, oily gel. Slime. She did her best to tuck and roll, but she still banged her head twice, both times hard, before she finally stopped sliding. Again, the sounds of Kramer's screaming filled her every sense. Through her spinning head, she had just enough thought to hope she was far enough away from that bug they were toasting to keep out of the acid. She covered her head and face and waited for the deadly shower. It didn't come. Hank shouted, "Form a circle and watch every shadow and corner." Then, after what seemed like a long time, but was actually only a moment, he was at her side, rolling her gently over on the wet floor. She opened her eyes, letting the room spin for a moment around her like she'd had way too much to drink. "Are you all right?" Hank asked, and she could see the look of panic and concern on both his and Kent's face spinning over her. She took a deep breath and exhaled. The room slowed its spinning and almost stayed put. Almost. She took another deep breath and it stopped. Thank God. She reached up and touched Hank's face gently. "Did you get the number of that damn truck that just hit me?" Hank looked at her for a moment, then laughed deep in his throat. God, she loved that laugh of his. And this one special laugh was one she was going to remember for a long, long time. Assuming, of course, she lived through the next hour. I think I found them, McPhillips said as he punched up one monitor and then another, filling the center of the wall with pictures from different angles of a main corridor in the living quarters.
Oh God, no!
Boswell said. Green felt his stomach twist with his worst fear. The joy he had felt from killing Larson a minute before was now totally gone, drained by the scene he saw on the wall. 3 of his Marines lay dead in the middle of the wide main corridor. Teppo had his head cut off and one arm was missing. Freeman was soaked in acid, his skin boiled away, his face missing. Bond had been gored through the chest by an alien jaw, his legs ripped from his body. All 3 still held their Kramers and looked as if they had all gone down fighting to the end. 7, maybe 8 alien bodies were scattered down the hall, attesting to the fight the men had put up. Scan down the hall, Father, Green ordered. God, please don't let it be all of them. Which way? Into the living sector. McPhillips did as he was told, and each new monitor showed more horror. 100 meters up from the 3 dead Marines was a group of 15 civilian bodies. 6 dead aliens lay around them, most with their heads shot off, some with their legs gone. But what had killed the civilians had been acid from the body of an alien beside them. From the way it looked, a bug was bearing down on them, and one of the civilians had just opened fire at the alien's body, causing the acid blood to pour over the humans in a flood of death. All their clothes had melted away, and the entire mess was a steaming, ugly pile of red meat, human skeletons, skulls, and brown acid blood. Behind him, Green heard Boswell throwing up. He didn't blame the man. He felt like doing the same thing. He took a deep breath. Keep scanning, he told McPhillips, who after a moment did as he was told. After what seemed like a long few minutes of finding nothing in either direction, McPhillips turned to Green. Looks like that was just one firefight. Green nodded. It looked that way to him also. Robinson must have assigned the 3 men to try to get the group of civilians back to the hangar deck, and they'd been ambushed in the corridor. Can you find the rest of the men? McPhillips shrugged. I could if I had a few hours, and if they haven't ducked into the ventilation tunnels and gone down. Green nodded. It did look hopeless. He was just going to have to hope that Robinson and the rest of the men could fight their way to the ship. But now it might not be a bad idea to get there themselves. If the professor was in the center of the alien section, they sure as hell weren't going in after him. He was as good as dead, and Green's only wish was that he would die slowly, with a facehugger tight on his face. Can you find the hangar deck quickly? Not a problem, McPhillips said, and within a few seconds had 4 different views of the deck on the monitors. Nothing but bugs, McPhillips said softly, expressing the obvious. 2 aliens were on top of Captain Palmer's shuttle, and a good dozen more were scattered around in plain sight. God only knew how many were hiding in those shadows and storage bays. Palmer and the rest of them were walking into a huge nightmare. Let's move! Green shouted and headed for the door at a full run.
Hang on a minute!
McPhillips shouted. Green turned around.
Sarge, I think there's a better way.
Make it quick. McPhillips' fingers danced over the control board, and again the map of the surrounding area filled the middle screen. The professor's got some private tunnels going down from here. He pointed at the bookcase behind him. I spotted them on a map when we were looking for Larson's location. One dumps directly onto the flight deck. Green nodded. Good work. Now let's find it. 30 seconds later, they had the hidden door open, and with Green on point and Rule bringing up the rear, they were at a full trot for the hangar deck. Green just hoped they would be there in time to help.